So, back in the day, before this tool existed, lawless land, difficult to optimize individual rooms, running back to position every time you wanted to practice a room, or worse, a single strat you kept failing over and over. Then comes in Everest. Well, Everest is probably the best mod ever created for Celeste, followed by Olympus for making the mod installation process easy, but these are only the enablers for what would change the Celeste community forever. Speedrun Tool. This is a mod created by the one and only DemoJameson, which may be a familiar name if you're in the Celeste space. It was released on Game Banana on February 14th, 2019, just over 1 year after the release of Celeste on January 25th, 2018. Despite its release, speedrunning times were becoming fairly established. Runners were already getting crazy load times before ever using it, but what the release of Speedrun Tool did do was bless the speedrunning community with a very important quality: accessibility. Strats could now be rehearsed much more efficiently. Setups could be discovered and practiced more thoroughly, the quality of life to run this game improved drastically, and today I'm going to be showing you exactly how you can take advantage of such a tool to become the best version of your Celeste speedrunner self you can be. Most games that are speedrun, played very quickly, probably have a tool like this. But the installation process for this tool was very simple and made getting into Celeste speedrunning, that much easier. And if you aren't a speedrunner, so what? This should still be the first mod you ever download for Celeste. Its utility for practicing small sections of anything, not just speedruns, is invaluable. Like, come on, you're gonna look at this room and tell me you're not gonna break it up into tiny sections to figure out what the heck is going on? If you own Celeste and have the ability to mod it, download the tool. It's that simple. This tool is the embodiment of what optimal, methodical, skill-building practice looks like. It was built with the goal of achieving the absolute lowest time possible using every possible metric we can fathom. It is a staple to Celeste speedrunning, and without it, we may still have gotten to this point in any percent sometime in the future, but how long that might have taken is something I don't want to think too hard about. Instead of just running through a bunch of its menus, I think it's important to show you how we plan on using it. If we can't see what the end goal looks like, our attention spans will not last through all of this. Let's start with the big question: why do we want to use Speedrun Tool? Because we want to be faster at the game. A game which has deadly strats, upon deadly rooms, upon deadly checkpoints, upon deadly levels, all wrapped up in a nice little categorical bow means there's so much to practice. So the best way we can retain all this information is to practice the strats to a room, then bundle some of those rooms together, then take on a whole checkpoint, and yes, you can see where this is going. First, we need the tool to install the tool, and it's the one that we just talked about, Olympus. You can find a link to it down in the description. There's also a link down there to install Everest, which is paramount to making any mods for Celeste work on your system. So don't forget to download it when you download Olympus. Olympus will handle your mod installations, and Everest will be the thing you load into anytime you want to do not any % legal stuff. Why do I bring this up? Well, don't get carried away with your practice and accidentally PB in a run that's unsubmittable. You'll have to either go back to the main Everest screen and hold right to boot into vanilla mode, or just close out the game and select Celeste in the Olympus menu. Now, what were we talking? Oh, right, we still need the mod! Time to make use of Olympus's core feature, which is search, install Speedrun Tool, and boot Everest up. It's time to practice practicing. And how do we do it? Optimally! Well, first off, enable the tool, silly. Next, we need a way to start in the exact same place before every attempt at a strat. And to frame our utilization of Speedrun Tool, what better rooms to use than... Important to note that I'm not trying to teach the strats here. The only important parts of this video are how I'm using Speedrun Tool. In this instance, we're gonna start, ironically, not at the start of Huge Mess, but in this fun little area. Say we want to practice the timing for these consecutive dashes since we always manage to do the third dash just a bit too late. It'd be very annoying to retry, climb up from the beginning of the room, then get into position again to try this strat. Going backwards to the same position is also not worth the time. Even worse, we most likely won't be in the same exact position we were in before. I say most likely, but it'll probably be very likely because subpixels are a thing, which only makes this tool more important because why do subpixels have to have a say in some of these stupid strats and make things so stupidly good? So in order to make sure we're in the exact position we intend to be in on every attempt to maximize consistency, we've got a handy feature of Speedrun Tool called State. And if you're at all familiar with save states, this is exactly what it sounds like. While this drop-down menu doesn't have the nitty-gritty of what we want, the menu under More Options does, specifically under Hotkeys. Wait, go back to that drop-down. This one doesn't exist. Don't turn it on. It'll just mess up the flow of your practice, especially if you're working on multiple rooms and take an accidental death. Then you'll get teleported back here and learn nothing about that death. It's a significantly better habit to consciously reload your state. Now, back to these hotkeys. If this is not enabled, please enable it. Because once you get into the config menu, this is where you'll find the keys to our success. Save state, load state, and clear state. We've also got this clear room timer PB and endpoint hotkey, which also has utility that we'll get into later. Now, don't be fooled. Before getting too far into these hotkeys, just know that they don't work like how our keyboard or controller binds work, where those allow us to set multiple binds per game action and each individual button can trigger it. For hotkeys, all keys or buttons set to a specific action must be pressed at the same time. So, if you have both F7 and 8, for example, set to save state, the game will only save state when both of those keys are pressed. So if you've accidentally already mapped your entire keyboard to these buttons and it isn't what you want to have set, hit that journal button to clear the hotkeys and start over with something that'll actually work for you. Just a tip, the load state button is going to be your best friend. So maybe give that one special priority as an easy to access hotkey that won't strain the hands. This is the point in the video where I tell you, y'all keyboard players have it easy. You're telling me I gotta get rid of 2 or 3 whole buttons from my vanilla key bindings just to fit these in for practice? That being said, avoid setting these hotkeys to the same keys or buttons as your vanilla bindings. Nothing but trouble can come from this overlap, mostly revolving around your muscle memory. If you're trying to hit a vanilla keybind while reloading a state, or worse, save stating when trying to hit a certain button, it just won't work. So make these hotkeys easy to access quickly, but not the same as your vanilla bindings. Down here in the controller section, you can see my hotkeys, which means, yes, my LT and select buttons are useless. But I don't clear states often, so I don't mind keeping that assigned on my keyboard. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this layout since you can also make use of your analog stick pushes as hotkeys, so experiment and go with whatever suits your current controller configuration. Just make sure you at least have a load state hotkey, like I mentioned before, assigned to your controller since that'll be your most frequently used action. Then feel free to throw the rest onto your keyboard. Anyway, let's put these hotkeys to action! We want to get into the position we'd naturally get into following our own strats. For me, I'd land right on this edge, which means this is where I want to place my save state. Now, everything freezes upon saving it, and I'm ready to start attempts. So I go for the consecutive dashes, and unfortunately miss the buffer for the last dash. So I end up here. Time to try again. So I hit that load state hotkey, and look at that! After I hit load state, and before I enter any inputs, everything is frozen again, and I'm in the exact same place as before. Then, when I'm ready to try again, I just gotta input some dashes, and look at that! I did it! Now you can get a bit mad with this. And if you want to go even crazier, these videos are a bit of a showcase on what happens when you've accumulated too much power in this game. Isaac, chill. For most beginner speedrunners, this is all well and good, and using these states to practice strats throughout the run will be more than enough. But what if I hate this strat? And I hate it so much, I want to try something else. Like in the sub 50 guide, how I opted for this super into a down left dash. Well, that's perfectly fine. But when changing strats, there's always a cost. How much time are you gaining or losing with your new strat implementation? Is it really as fast as you think it is? Is it actually saving you time, or are you just stubborn? And look, guys, I swear the strat works. You gotta believe me. We need a reliable way to time our strats so we have full transparency on how it's going to affect our runs. Under the same hotkeys config menu, we'll see a hotkey for set room timer endpoint. Again, for us key deficient controller players, we can keep this as a bind on our keyboard instead of losing another button to something that we don't have to access as often as our save state and load state hotkeys. With this hotkey enabled, the next step is to think critically about where to put the endpoint. We should always consider the following. Wherever both strats we're comparing converge at a single point before the next strat, that's where we want to place the endpoint. In this case, it's very simple. Regardless of the 3-dash strat or the super into down left strat, we will end up landing right here. So hit that button and yippee! We got an endpoint! What, you don't like grandma judging your strat attempts? Lucky for you, we can go under the room timer menu and cycle through everything under endpoint style. Choose whatever you want, but I think the golden berry feels the most rewarding. In other scenarios, it may not be so simple since this endpoint flag triggers the moment you touch it anywhere. So if you're in the air on one strap but on the ground for another in the same section, the timing difference you'll see could be misleading. Just use your brain and take care with the positioning of these endpoints if you're going deep into the weeds with timing. Finally, we have a save state, a load state, and our endpoint. We're in the clear. We can now attempt our strat, and why isn't it working? Oh, enable this. Now for real, let's give it a, why isn't it working? Oh, there's two modes here. Next room and current room. Well, that feels like a transition to our next topic, but not just yet. We gotta make sure our strat practice works. So change this to current room and the timer starts going. Now we can finally hit load state and we're actually prepared for actually real this time to test our two strats. Now it all comes down to your strat execution. The best time I managed to get for the harder 3- variant was... Now let's see what the easier super into down left dash variant gets us. The fastest time I can get is about 4 frames slower than the harder variant, and that's the best case scenario. If I do take my time, it looks to be about a little bit more than 0.1 seconds. Quick thing I gotta mention is that these times do not get saved beyond this current test session. The moment you create a new save state, leave the chapter, or create a new flag, the time will vanish into the ether. So if you're happy with the time you get and want to record it, you're gonna have to throw it on a spreadsheet. But there is one that I'd suggest that is made by one of my lovely patrons, Astro, which allows you to see how far up the ladder you are in terms of speed. I think it's a fun way to keep track of where you can improve to have clean, balanced runs, and I highly recommend checking it out. And it'll be down there in the description with every other link that hopefully you click on before doing any of this. Quick insert while we talk about Astro, my patrons! They're lovely and always deserve the shout out. Thank you, Astro, for a magnificent spreadsheet. Back to the Speedrun Tool. As you can see, this blows the optimization door wide open. We can now make decisions on the individual strat level and think, is this much time save really worth it at my current 90% level? Then go from there. As long as you follow the correct procedure of starting and ending where the strats converge, you can time all the strat alternatives your heart desires. And most importantly, you can cater any percent runs to whatever works for you. Just one more thing. Remember that clear state button? And also that other really long one? We can use both of these hotkeys to clear our endpoint flag, but the important distinction is that clear state clears your state. I know, crazy. While the other hotkey will clear only the flag and the time associated with using that flag. So if you misplace a flag while you have a load state you currently like, or want to move the flag farther up in the room, this is the one you want. This only becomes more important of a hotkey when you move to another room and make a new save state, but still have that flag sitting there, because that flag's existence means you gotta hit it to stop the timer. So, in the next section, when you see that we're trying to time rooms after your strat practice and the timer isn't stopping, you probably have a flag floating around. So clear it. In this case though, we're changing gears, so clear state will work just fine. We need to get ready for the next step in becoming a Speedrun Tool expert. Let me present a new scenario to you. What if you need to time a collection of strats, and those strats change based on the strats which come before it? And what if these strats happen to span multiple rooms? It's time to get into the more difficult aspect of accurate timekeeping, and that's going to be this room timing section. Let's start with the simplest scenario. We just want to see what our absolute best time is for all of our strats in this room of huge mess. We've gone through the effort of timing all the individual components of it, and we're ready to string them all together. So we have to start with the features of this tool that can help us with room-based practice. It also happens to be the first, well, I guess the second selection under this first menu. It's the number of rooms. That should be obvious. But as we saw before, we can also time the current room or next room. So what do we choose? It's very situational, but for the most part, we want to see what our total time in a room is. So the best practice in this case would be setting the timing method to next room, and we're only doing it for the one room. Easy. Now we can set a save state before the room we want to time. Note that the timer isn't running. Then after the transition, the timer is started. Then after doing your first mistake-riddled awkward attempt and exit the room, you'll see that we've established a time to compete against. And on reloading the state, Speedrun Tool even keeps a note of your fastest time tucked underneath your current working time. And you can see how quickly you can spiral down the "I know I can save at least one more frame" trap. Attempt after attempt, you can see how you compared against your best forging new best room times every so often, and see the mistakes holding you back in real time. And after hours of grinding through a room followed by a good night of sleep, the next day, it's like that room is baked into the muscle fibers of your hands and fingers. It becomes easier, you become better, and this is still only the beginning. There's times where, like I mentioned before, room strats can tie into one another and make timing alternative strats slightly more difficult. While ZCAD route is a great example of this, I think it'll be best to stick with something simpler like this room here, the first room of the huge mess checkpoint. In this room, we can run into Oshiro, cutscene skip, and super to land up on this platform, then super into the next room like we were doing for our individual huge mess hub practice. Oh wait, you're probably wondering how I even navigated here without restarting the chapter, huh? Time for a small tangent. Thankfully, this tangent won't take us far off the path at all, since here under the same hotkeys config we've been working in, we can set up a hotkey to open the debug map. I could have told you about this sooner to make the last practice session easier, but look, you gotta suffer the hard way too, okay? Now you won't forget about this! Go ahead and set a hotkey, navigate out of the menus, press that hotkey, and would you look at that? Every single room available in this level. Fun fact, do this in Summit, then click in and hold your scroll wheel to move to the side of the map, where you'll be able to hop into these rooms from the credits. With some experimentation, you'll see that all the red pixels indicate spawn points, green boxes are checkpoints, yellow are keys, and pink are strawberries. You may realize there are so many spawn points, and if you follow along with my Map Along With Me series, you'll understand why. Anyway, using your mouse and the tooltips at the bottom right, you can right-click into any spawn point you need to go to. So if you're in this room and spawn back to where you spoke to Oshiro, you can see that he's vanished! Go back into the debug window, take a look at the bottom right where it says hold control, and you'll see that holding it when you right click on a location will restart the chapter when you go back in, which includes restarting NPC interactions. Now, with all of that out of the way, where were we? The alternative strat here! So yeah, wave dash in, cutscene skip, yada yada, but there is a significantly faster strat here which doesn't just affect our timing for this room, but the hub room as well. And to make sure our timing of multiple rooms is as clear as day, let's use the debug tool to go back one more room to the right side here before we get into the checkpoint, and we're ready to go. Okay, now for the alternative strat. Instead of just wave dashing up to Oshiro and doing a cutscene skip, it's actually possible to execute a grounded ultra, then hit talk, and execute the cutscene skip in the middle of that second downright dash in order to press jump and retain all of that momentum, which allows you to press jump on the higher platform, then fly into the hub room with significantly more speed than the super from the alternative strat. That's called the cutscene ultra. Pretty neat tech. I'm not expecting you to do the strat or execute it in your runs. Remember, this is a Speedrun Tool tutorial. I'm just showing you an example of how timing rooms can get complicated. Because now if we do the exact same strats we did last time for hub room, that extra bit of momentum entering the room will actually net us time save. Well, we can only do that by relying on the previous room strat. So in these cases, practicing these rooms together is a very frequent occurrence, and it's also encouraged. It helps connect rooms together in our brains and muscle memory instead of only thinking about strats room by room. Oh yeah, one last fairly obvious thing. If you're gonna start here and time the next 2 rooms, then you should set your settings to next 2 rooms. Oh, and if you're at all curious of smaller room segments, you can actually tick down to 1 room and see how fast the first one was within the 2-run segment. There's just a few more tools at our disposal that we can make use of. Say that we want to time ourselves from the beginning of this checkpoint to, I don't know, over here in the second leg of Huge Mess. Sure, you can count all of those rooms like a silly goose, or you can think back to our hotkey for setting the room timer endpoint. It lets us set some goofy icons down to signal our endpoint for our timer. But if we use that debug window we just learned about and pair it with our endpoint hotkey right over here, it should glow yellow. Now there's no counting required. Once you speedrun over to the room you have highlighted, the timer will stop and display your glorious time. It's important to know that this will override any settings you have set for room counts, but your next versus current room timing method will still be functional. Last thing, because I know that some of you out there may indulge in your mods a bit too much, and these settings can get buried in the mod options page. Make your life significantly easier by going into Olympus, clicking on Manage, then depending on your installation, whether it's Steam, itch.io, etc., click on Browse, then a window will pop up showing the location of your Celeste installation. Get into the mods folder, click on Type to reorder the folder by file type if you have too damn many of them like I do, and there it is! Mod options order.txt is the one we want to double click on. And here is where you can specify whatever mod you want to have at the top by putting the name as it is in the same mod folder. In this case, it'll be speedruntool.zip. And believe it or not, that's everything that'll get your foot in the door when it comes to the Speedrun Tool. A lot of the other functionality this tool offers revolves around customized experiences like respawn speeds and death statistics if you want to analyze your practice attempts, although this one doesn't get too much use, so don't go crazy over it. But here comes an update to ruin the script I had prepared already! Thanks, devs! We've got some new functionality in the latest version of Speedrun Tool that's honestly quite revolutionary, and that is the multi-state function, also known as the Screw You Controller Players feature. Well, at least it's still useful, even if you are a controller player. This is a bit more advanced of a feature that may not be the most useful to you at first, but can really help streamline practice sessions once you're comfortable with the base operations of the tool. For example, pretend you're practicing multiple rooms back to back in huge mess, but manage to keep dying here over and over, but you don't want to lose that perfect first state you set. You can now imagine each state like a different box where Madeline has parked her butt into. With this new feature, you can switch over to the second box available, save a state there in that stupid room, practice it a bunch of times, and when you're done, switch back to your first box and give all the rooms another go. I'm sure there will be many more creative uses for this kind of tool, so the best thing you can do is experiment with different hotkeys for your multiple save states and go wild! But not until you learn the basics of the tool. Baby steps. Now, as far as your practice is concerned, it's all up to you. Without this tool, I'm not sure I would have ever started speedrunning this game. And it's not like Celeste is unique. There are so many other games with similar tools that exist to foster quality practice, all in an effort to find more and more time save in every possible way to push boundaries in these games to places never seen before. Seriously, download this tool. A link to the Game Banana page and the other mods necessary to make it work will all be in the description underneath that subscribe button, which would be very kind of you to hit to stay up to date on the latest explanations and guides I've got coming. DemoJameson, thank you for such a brilliant tool. There's not a day that goes by where I play Celeste without it, and I think that goes for anyone else who speedruns this game on a computer. It's truly a life-saving and time-saving tool. As for the rest of you, good luck on your Celeste speedrunning journey. And if you're not on the Celeste speedrunning journey, still download it, and good luck on whatever journey you're proceeding forward with. Hopefully you get to reap the benefits of the Speedrun Tool as so many others already have. And when you do, come over to my Discord to post about it in the weekly showcase channel where I take a look at those submissions every week on my Twitch. You won't regret it. Hopefully. Bye-bye!